Welcome to Story Hour, a virtual meetup hosted by Wolf and Heron.
I'm laying in bed, quite peacefully, in my St. George's hotel room on the corner of Weaverstrasse in Zurich, Switzerland. It is a scene that simply must be set, so bear with me. Midnight, an open, screenless window letting in a warm, early autumn breeze. A few apartment lights on across the way where Swiss residents do Swiss resident things. One bottle of cheap red wine, half empty, although nothing is cheap here. One block of Gruyere, half eaten, and a corkscrew turned cheese knife. A girl, me, in a bathrobe, because one who does not wear exclusively a bathrobe while staying at any hotel is not necessarily a person that I aim to be. It's the first time being back in the city since I lived here 4 years ago. And when I was here last, I lived actually just around the corner on Manessastrasse with a family who changed me more or less in the best way. So I sit here in this bed feeling the joy of nostalgia. You know what I mean? Like, we've all been here. There are these joyous moments in life that you know you'll never get back, but sometimes in certain crafted moments, there is this lingering memory that is almost palpable. So I am in quintessential peace, alone. That is until a cockroach has the audacity to come flying into my lair. So the first thing I do is panic, of course. The second thing I do is chug wine. And the third thing I do is Google, do cockroaches fly? Because I wasn't sure if it was a flying cockroach, but that's what it looked like. And in case you're wondering, it isn't quite clear. I guess it depends on the region, the type, and a bunch of other things. But at this time, I'm not really trying to do a full-blown insect analysis. So flying cockroach is the final determination. And as a self-proclaimed avid camper and nature enthusiast, in which I am now considering an untruthful description of myself, I really do try hard for 3 minutes to be unbothered by his presence. And in those 3 minutes, what is excruciatingly painful for me is the silence between the buzzing and the pitter-patter of this flying roach. In my room, there is a bowl-like lamp on the ceiling above my bed. And it's here in this bowl on the ceiling above my bed that the flying cockroach plays psychological mind games with me for the better half of an hour. He dances on the inside of the bowl, his little shadow giving me little heart attacks. And every few minutes, for one optimistic second, I think, perhaps he is stuck there in the bowl on the ceiling above my bed. But when optimism strikes, reality sets in, and he crawls out just a tad to walk along the brim of the lampshade in slow motion. I mean, he's teasing me. Like, what else could it be? And the teasing continues until he dives back into his lampshade haven in the bowl on the ceiling above my bed. I'm sorry, there is just absolutely no way I'm going to be able to sleep with you dancing like that. And I wish I could say this is getting boring, but unfortunately, I am all consumed by this entirely unwelcome performance. Can you imagine this whole time I've only had one sip of wine? Silence. Because he's traversing the brim. Again, the devil himself back for another lap. He stops and stares at me. Is it the Gruyere you want? Is it? Because you can have it. I get out of bed. Suddenly, I'm in need of some sort of defense. I grab the pristine white hotel hand towel and look up into his eyes, I think. Yes, I will give up my Gruyere for you to leave this city. You heard me, this city, stomps foot. In a stunning turn of events, he flies right at me, and with my pristinely white hotel hand towel, I swipe like a lunatic. Also, I'm screaming. Silence again. Where did he go? Over there. On the floor. On his back. I'm at about 170 beats per minute when I raise the pristinely white hotel hand towel high, ready for the swat of my life. I'll spare you the details, other than if you're wondering if I'm the type of person who can handle the capture and release method, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I spent the rest of my evenings at the St. George's Hotel on the corner of Weaverstrasse in Zurich, Switzerland, with sealed windows and the sweetest, most victorious smile on my face. The end.
Unmute to applaud.
Oh my God, Molly, I'm crying.
Thank you for sharing your story, Molly. Always appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, let's kick it off. So what was powerful about Molly's story? What should she hold on to?
I'm trying to get the raise hand feature, but since nobody's
Okay,
gonna,
go for it,
guess
Jake.
yourself.
Go for it.
Definitely. I really liked her use of the descriptions words that she used. So whenever she perfectly described how the cockroach was moving in and out on the lamp or how it was sitting on its back, I really liked those describer words and sort of how she used metaphors or simile, and not really similes, but metaphors in those moments. I appreciated that description and it made it really vivid. It made me feel like I was actually in the room. And I know that's one trait of great stories. And I know that stories should be like experienced as if you were there. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, really helped you visualize it. Absolutely. Jeffrey.
Yeah, so I echo with Jack's comment there. I think the vivid description of the setting is very, very strong, very helpful. The second part of that is even more impactful is the description of your mental state as the move of the insect, right, every minute. So that is very, very powerful. And at the end, you close that with what you did. And that was very interesting. I think that grabbed my attention right away. So those are the three things I really kudos you for that.
Mm-hmm. And Bart, did I see your hand up as well?
Yeah, definitely. Like just mirroring what Jeff and Jake said was just the imagery of it was fantastic. Just like you can just picture the bowl and the little cockroach flying around because we've all had it, whether it's a fly or whatever it is. It's inside the lamp, and you're like, "Son of a bitch, just come out so I can freaking nail you." It's a moth or whatever, and it's driving you nuts. But the cockroach definitely gives it an extra little, over a fly or a moth.
Awesome, Armand.
I would echo the same exact message. The only thing I would like to add in addition to the depiction of the scene, I think the emotions that she described herself, how she felt, it made me kind of feel, especially if you have had a similar experience, it was easy to flash back and say, yep, I've been encountered with a cockroach before too. And the attention to details. I think all of those details that were described was very helpful.
Stephanie, last comment.
Well, I love the humor. It's just hilarious. And I think part of the reason it's hilarious is because you draw out like detail after detail after detail of the drama. It's like, oh, the walking around the bowl and the little, like this, I'm just imagining like the little fingers coming around, it's just like, there was something just so slow about the progression that made us be in the discomfort of it all for so long that it was hilarious for that reason. But the other thing from a literary perspective that I wanted to call out as being a really interesting strength was the repetition that you use. There's many moments, like you described that bowl above the bed several times with exactly the same sentence, right? And you described the room in the St. George's Hotel in Switzerland, like over and over and over again. And there's something kind of just poetic about that use of repetition that was cool from a story experience perspective.
Yeah. Awesome. Kudos. All right. What are some experiments for Molly to try in a future version of this story? What are some things that she could play around with? Bart.
The only thing I was missing was like I got the anxiety, but I didn't know where you were during the cockroach. Like, are you in the bed looking up? Are you next to the bed? Like, I want to get in. I want to go to bed, or like what are you at that point? That was the only thing I didn't get was like, where are you at that time and point? Like, so that's all. Yeah.
In a way, it's because you were so very much like you placed yourself in a room. And then for us to visualize it, or like where in the room is helpful at that point. Other thoughts? Armand, go ahead.
So I think the story was so great, and I don't know if this comment would make sense, but as I felt being part of your story, Molly, I was thinking, if you could play or toy with the idea of having some sort of, uncertainties in terms of next steps. What should I do? How should I proceed? I would personally enjoy being in that position. Like maybe I should just put go under the bed and sleep the night, and the cockroach is going to die out of hunger overnight. Just saying that it's not just, I don't have to fight it necessarily. Or maybe I should call the hotel folks to come and take care of it. Or maybe I should throw some water at it, like coming up with some random ideas to help us be in that position, and then appreciate the move that you made. Like all of a sudden I decided to, kill it or something. That's probably the only element I would suggest to add.
It'd be interesting. Jake, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, what I would add to that before you move on, Kara, what Armand is pointing out is like decision points are really interesting in a story, and thinking about what are the possible ways that you might go and the stakes of each possibility is a really great way to invite curiosity in your audience and get them thinking about like, what would I be doing? Right. And so to Armand's point, to kind of process through your options and like, oh, that's a bad idea, or like, yeah, maybe I should just like fill the bowl with water. Well, then what's going to happen? Right. It's like, you can start to imagine the different directions that the story might go. And that can be really exciting for your audience to play with.
Jake, go ahead.
I thought the story is really great, by the way, Molly. A couple things. I think the first, I think you were smiling a lot throughout it, which is like an issue I always have. I'm always smiling, but I think the story would hold a lot more weight if like you smiled at points, like necessary times, like you kind of chose times to smile versus kind of like laughing or smiling throughout the entire story. Because then like if you're serious and you smile at specific times, it just like, it adds emphasis and it makes the story more serious. And along that same note, I think if you slowed down and paused at specific moments, like you could really, really emphasize specific things. I think at like points in transition where I'm like, okay, what's about to happen? You kind of move quickly in that transition versus if you kind of slowed down and just waited a second before you said the next thing, I think like you could really, really like make the story really great.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you.
One thought that I had too, Molly, is that this felt like the short story version of the story. And what I mean by that is like, and I think Stephanie used the word literary earlier too. Like it felt like I could imagine it being in a short story collection. And there's probably a version of this that is different, that is what you say aloud. And there's a few choices that you would maybe make because of that. For example, like I think there was one where you're like, oh, Stomp's foot, where like I can picture that being written and that being such a clever line. But when you say it aloud, it's like, does anybody say Stomp's foot aloud? There's probably a different version of that. Or when you say, like you had a moment where you were like, and then silence, where there's a universe where that plays, but there's also a universe where if you're sharing a story aloud, you just go, and then, and you just give silence. Right. So I think it's just something to experiment with as you're working on a story of like, what is the final format of this? Is there only one format? If it's written, what does that mean? If it's aloud, if it's oral, what does that mean? Or if it's both, maybe I have multiple versions, just something to play around with there.
Definitely. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you everyone for your feedback. And thank you, Molly, for your story.
Visit wolfandheron.com to find out more about our story hours.